Good morning, students. In today's class of Managing Change in Organization, we'll continue with the topic that we're discussing in the previous class. In the previous class, we were discussing about resistance to change. We have understood what are the various sources of resistance of change, what are the individual factors or reasons for resistance to change, and what are the organizational factors or reasons for resistance to change. We have also started to understand, after understanding what is resistance to change, we have understood that resistance is a very natural way of reacting to change, and what are the things that a manager can do in order to overcome this resistance to change. Under that, we have studied about the OCM, organizational change management, and we have also studied certain approaches that can be used by managers in order to resolve this or overcome this resistance to change. We have also discussed certain successful strategies of OCM that can be applied for overcoming this resistance to change. In today's class, just will recap a little bit about what we have studied in the previous class, and then we'll continue about what are the various main tactics that can be used, the main methods or tactics that can be used by managers in order to overcome this resistance to change. So let us start the class. So whenever there is a resistance to change, we have to understand that as successful managers are those who accept this responsibility for managing this change, and this manager should be sensitive to resistance to change so that it can be overcome easily. So the managers have to understand that change, resistance to change is very common, very natural, and they should able to very able to accept this change, resistance to change, and accept the responsibility to overcome this resistance to change, and they should be very sensitive towards it, towards the topic of resistance to change, because they should understand that what are the reasons behind this resistance to change. Because once they are very sensitive and they once understand the issues due to which the people resist the change, then they will be easily helpful for them to overcome this resistance to change and make the employees accept or embrace the change. So it is very important for successful managers to accept the responsibility for managing the change and also be very sensitive towards the issue of resistance to change so that they can easily overcome this resistance to change. So there are certain approaches that are used by managers for overcoming this resistance to change. Some of the most important approaches that are used are approaches are: first, managing change through power, use of power in order to put the employees in such a situation that they will accept change. So this is one of the ways that is used by managers to overcome this resistance to change. Second is managing change through reason. This is a much more better way of managing the resistance to change. Under this approach, the managers, they try to reason with these employees or the people who are resisting the change by telling them why the resistance is why this change is required to be implemented in the organization. They have to reason that, they have to explain the reason to the employees or the people who are resisting the change, whether it is individual resistance or it is a organizational and group resistance. So they have to explain it to them, so the change can be managed by having certain reasoning with this employees. And another way of managing change is managing change through re-education. So you have to re-educate the employees regarding why the change is required in the organization, how it will be helpful for the organization if the organization moves ahead with the implementation of the change program. And we have to re-educate the people so that they will embrace the change and they will not fear about the change, they will not distrust about the change process, and they will accept the change process in a much more confident manner. So these are the various three approaches that is generally used by successful managers in order to overcome this resistance to change by managing this resistance to change. So in general, if we say organizational change management, or the way in which the change management can be handled, or in which the resistance to change can be handled, OCM means is a framework for managing the effect of new business processes changes in organizational structure or cultural changes within an enterprise. When an enterprise aims to implement a particular change program throughout the organization, they have to understand this resistance to change, and they have to manage this resistance to change. So under this head comes the organizational change management, which is a framework under which the various processes, the organizational structure and cultural changes that happens within the organization or an enterprise is managed, and it is seen that the resistance to change is kept at a minimum and people accept the change or embrace the change. A systematic approach to OCM is beneficial when change requires people throughout an organization to learn new behaviors and skills. As we were discussing now, it is whenever we are thinking about OCM, it means that is a framework under which the when the change is implemented throughout the organization, and when the change requires that new behaviors and skills has to be put in place or to be put in practice, then this ocean techniques should be used. This strategies should be used to see that the change is properly managed in the organization, and to see that the people, they do not resist this change and they understand this change. So various tactics has been developed, various ways in which the successful managers can overcome this resistance to change. Following tactics can help these change agents or managers to deal with resistance to change. So there are nine major heads under which we'll discuss the ways in which we can overcome this resistance to change. Each of these heads will be explained a little bit in detail in the following uh, slides. So let us start with the first tactics that is available for a successful manager, which or a change agent, in order to implement change successfully and to overcome this resistance to change. First is education and communication. So we have to educate the people and communicate with the people regarding the change, so they will be understanding the change much more properly, the change initiative much more properly, and they will be accepting this change. Communication Communicating is the logic of a change can reduce employee resistance on two levels. So whenever we are communicating the logic, the rationale behind the change process, then it can reduce this employee resistance at two levels. What happens? First, it fights the effects of misinformation and poor communication. That means if employees receive full facts and clear up misunderstandings, resistance would subside. So the first thing that this communication of the logic behind the change that we do with the employees, it helps the organization in two ways. First is that it removes the effects of misinformation or poor communication. What happens whenever generally a change is going to be initiated in the organization, a lot of rumor are spread regarding the change. A lot of misinformation is given, is spread regarding the change process, and there is poor communication. Sometimes poor communications from the top management or people who are dealing with the change or implementing the change in the organization. They do not communicate properly regarding the rationale behind the change, regarding why the change is important. So all these misunderstandings and poor communications results to fear in the minds of the employees, and they resist the change process. So if there is proper communication, if there is removal of all these misunderstandings, then the resistance or subsidize or reduce. So this is the first way in which communicating the logic of change can reduce this employee resistance. Second, communication can help sell the need for change by packaging it properly. So it will be easier for the top management to sell the need for change to the employees much more easily, because it can be packaged properly, it can be presented in a better way to the employees by telling them, by making them understand the logic behind the change, why the change is required for the organization. Employees can be educated about the change process through one-to-one discussion, memos, group presentations, and reports. So these are some of the ways in which there can be education and communication with the uh, employees regarding the logic about the change and why the change is required. It may be one-to-one discussion where the person who are resisting change are discussed. They are discussed one-to-one and then the memos can also be issued, or group presentations can also be done, and reports can also be given regarding the whole change process. So this removes any kind of misinformation or poor communication happening, and this will be easier for the top management or the leadership to easily sell the concept of change to the employees. Now, another thing which can be done, a study was generally done with German companies which revealed that changes are most effective when company communicates the rationale that balances the interest of various stakeholders. So what happens, a study was conducted by German companies which revealed that a lot of this resistance can be subsided when the people or the resisting the change, they understand the rationale behind the change and the various interests of various stakeholders. There are a lot of stakeholders in an enterprise. They may be the shareholders, the employees, the community, and the customers. Community means the society and the customers. All these are having certain stakes in the enterprise, so they are not the stakeholders. So if we the change is able to balance the interest of all these stakeholders, then it will lead to this removal of this resistance to change. For example, introduction of computers in the workplace will create resistance, but this can be overcome by providing employees with opportunities and hands-on practice which will alleviate their fears about the new technological change initiative. So an example is given under which it is discussed that whenever a new computer system is going to be installed or to bring about in the place, there is a technological change that is going to be happening in the organization. So generally when a technological change happens, the people, due to the fear of the unknown, they resist the change. But when these employees are explained about the various opportunities that it's going to open up, and the hands-on practice that they will receive when this change initiative is implemented, this will alleviate or remove these fears of about this new technological change, and the people will be able to accept the change much more positively, will be able to embrace this change much more effectively. So it is very important from the top management or the managers, project managers, the change agents to properly communicate and educate the employees regarding the change initiative. So once this is done, then there will be proper removal of this misunderstandings and removal of this poor communication, and also this will be able for the top management will be able to sell the concept of change to the people easily. Second practice that can be used in order to remove this resist or overcome this resistance to change is participation. Research evidence lends support to the fact that individuals find it difficult to resist a change decision in which they have participated. So once they become participants in the change process, once they become the torchbearers of the change process, then it is very difficult for this uh, people to resist the change. So the research already has supported this notion that once people become a part of the change process, once they have participated in the change process, then it is becomes very difficult for them to resist that change. Hence, before a change is introduced, particularly those who resist the change can be brought into the decision process. So those people who are resisting this change, they can be brought into the decision process, they can be involved in the decision process, and once they have participated in the change process, then their chances of resisting the change will be reduced. Assuming participants have the expertise to make meaningful contribution, their involvement can reduce resistance, obtain commitment, and increase the quality of the change result. So whenever we are seeing that people, those who are resisting or people who are creating problems in the organization in the implementation of the change program, they must be included in the decision process. It should be kept in mind to see that whatever participants they are added in the decision process, these participants should have proper expertise so that they can make a meaningful contribution. Otherwise, it doesn't make sense to make them involved in the decision process. And second, we have to see that whether their involvement can actually reduce resistance. If their involvement does not reduce resistance, then it is of no use. So second, we have to see that whether the involvement of those people, those who are resisting the change, will actually reduce the resistance. Then we have to obtain certain kind of commitment from them. They should be committed towards the change process, because if they are not committed and they do not work wholeheartedly, then the change process will obviously fail. And finally, we have to also see whether their involvement increases the quality of the change decision, because once we are bringing them into the decision process, once we are asking their participation, then we have to see that their inclusion into the decision process actually increases the quality of the change decision. Because if these things are not possible, that if they are not having any expertise, if they do not make any meaningful contribution, and their involvement does not reduce any kind of resistance, or they are not working very committedly, or their increase of quality in the change decision is not taking place, there is no use of involving these people into this change process, in the decision process, and also make them participate in the change process. So before making them participate in the change decision process, we have to see that they have these skills. And however, against these advantages are the negatives: potential for poor solution and great consumption of time. Also, we have to see that not only we have to look at the advantages, but certain disadvantages are also included in that. First is that when we include a lot of people or participate a lot of people in the change process, it may lead to a poor solution or a great consumption of time, because a lot of people are there in the decision making process. This elongates the decision process, slows down the decision process. So we have to see whether participating these employees in the these resisting employees in the decision process will be helpful in making the decision process much more faster, much more proper, of good quality, and to see that the participants, they have the requisite expertise to make a meaningful contribution. So if this is there, then they can be involved in the decision process in order to remove the resistance in the organization. Now, the third initiative that can be taken, the third tactic that is there for the successful managers to overcome resistance to change, is building support and commitment. So, if we build support and support the employees and build up their commitment, then they will have much more trust in the change process and they will embrace the change. When employees fear and anxieties are high, counseling and therapy, new skills training, or a short paid leave of absence may facilitate adjustment. So, what happens whenever they fear the unknown, when the anxiety levels are very, very high, or they fear that they will be losing their income or their jobs? So, the best way to deal with it is to give them counseling, give them therapy, and give them training about the new skills, because sometimes there is a fear of failure. They feel that they will not be able to perform in the new working environment. So new skills, whatever is required for them to work in the new environment, those skills should be given to them. They should be proper training should be given in those skills. And sometimes a short paid leave of absence may also facilitate adjustment, because so it will reduce their anxiety levels and they will be able to accept the change in a much more proper manner. When managers or employees have low emotional commitment to change, they favor the status quo and resist it. Whenever the managers or the employees, those who are resisting the change, they have very low emotional commitment to change. So they are not very emotionally connected with the change process. They do not want the change to happen. So they are in favor of the status quo. So they are favor of what is going on in the organization, and they resist this change process. However, if employees are much more accepting of changes, when they are committed to the organization as a whole, they will be accepting the change much more in a proper way, in a much more positive way. So this is very important. For managing resistance to change, support and empathy should be given to the employees who have trouble dealing with the change. So a proper commitment, proper support should be given to them, to the people resisting the change. Proper empathy should be shown to understand why they're resisting the change. By keeping ourselves in their shoes, we can understand empathetically why these people are resisting the change. So this kind of support and commitment, this will help in dealing with employees who are having trouble dealing with change, and they will be in a position to accept change in a much more proper manner. Another way in which we can overcome this resistance to change is by negotiating with the people who are resisting the change. So whenever we find that people are resisting the change, we can also use negotiation as a tactics for overcoming this resistance to change. Negotiation, particularly with a group of powerful individuals resisting the change, is yet another strategy to deal with potential resistance to change. We have already studied that resistance to change can be individual or at a group level or organizational level. So when we find that a group of people are resistant to change, then we can negotiate it with these powerful individuals who are in the group and and use it as a strategy to deal with potential resistance to change. Because whenever we see that negotiation can be a way, can be a path that can we can take so that we can remove this resistance to change, then we have to take that option. We have to take that negotiation as a way of resolving this or overcoming this resistance to change. For a specific reward package can be negotiated with these powerful individuals to meet their individual demands or needs. So what happens, a particular reward package can be negotiated that they will be receiving this, the resisting group will be resisting, because these powerful individuals, when they are given a reward package, then their individual needs and wants and demands are satisfied. So when their individual needs, demands and wants are satisfied, then these powerful individual, once they get the reward package, they will be negotiating with the organization or the change agent, and they will not be resisting the change anymore. So negotiation can also be used as one of the tools for overcoming this resistance to change. In addition, once a few powerful individuals accept the negotiation, it may so happen that they may be blackmailed by the change agent to resolve the resistance. So what happens in a group of powerful individuals, those who are resisting the change, if we try to allure, try to attract certain people by giving a reward package, by negotiating with them, then if those few powerful individuals they accept the negotiation, then it can be used, they can be blackmailed by the organization or the change agent in order to tell that they will be they may be blackmailed by the change agent to resolve this resistance, because since they've already negotiated with the organization or the change agent, so they do not have this ample room, and they will can be easily blackmailed by the change agent to see that the change that the resistance to change is properly resolved. Another way of overcoming the resistance to change is by developing a positive relationship with employees, because whenever change happens, if we have a very positive relationship with the employees, then the employees have a certain kind of trust with the management, trust with the change agent, so they will be accepting change much more properly. But when we do not have a positive relationship, then this change process will bring a lot of chaos in the organization, and the people will have distrust in the change process, and they will not support the change process. So very one of the ways in which we can overcome this resistance to change is by developing a very positive relationship with the employees. People are more willing to accept changes if they trust the managers implementing them. Obviously, when we are having a certain kind of belief and trust about the managers who are the flag bearers of this change process, or those who are implementing the change in the organization, then you believe them, you have this positive relationship with them. However, if you do not have a very positive relationship, or you do not trust the managers who are implementing the change, then obviously you will resist change, because you will feel that these managers are trying to take advantage of you and you do not want to support them. So it is very important that the positive relationship has to be developed to see that these people have trust in the managers, those who are implementing the change. A study was done of 235 employees of a large housing corporation in Netherlands that was done, which was experiencing a merger. So a study was done, and in this study, it was found that those who had a positive relationship with the supervisors, who felt that the work environment supported development, were much more positive about the change process. So those people who are working in that housing corporation that it was going merger, undergoing merger or experiencing a merger, those employees, those who are having a positive relationship with the supervisors or felt that the work environment supported the development, so they were having certain positive relationship with the supervisor, and they had this positive, due to this positive relationship they were having trust in the work environment, and they believed that the work environment supported their development. It was seen that there was much more positive response, and there was more positive toward the change process, and they were not resisting the change process. Because of this positive relationship with the supervisors, they were not resisting the change process, and they were interested in accepting the change process. Though the studies have proven that if we have and develop a positive relationship with the employees, then it will work wonders and they will be accepting change in a much more efficient manner. Research suggests that if managers are able to facilitate positive relationship, that they may be able to overcome this resistance to change even among those who ordinarily don't like changes. So even if the individuals or the employees, they do not personally like changes in the organization, they do not like changes in the status quo, they will also be interested or inclined to embrace the change once they have a positive relationship with the change agent or the people or the managers who are implementing the change in the organization. So this can be, by developing this positive relationship, this can be used as a tool for overcoming resistance to change in the organization. Another way that can be, another technique or tool that can be used to overcome resistance to change is by implementing changes fairly. All the change, the whole change process has to be implemented fairly, to see that nobody is given any any unfair advantage, and to see that there properly the change is implemented throughout the organization. So once this is done, there is a trust that is developing with the change agent and the top management, and these people will not be resisting change, will be accepting the change. But however, if we see that the implementation of changes is not happening properly, there is unfair way it is been implemented. On some employees it is harsh, and on some employees it is, this change process is very very light, then they will not be interested in the change process, they will not accept or embrace the change process, and they will resist the change process. So it is very important to see that the implementation of the change process happens very fairly in the organization, whole organization. So one way a organization can minimize this negative impact is to make sure that the change is impacted or implemented fairly. Procedural fairness is especially important when employees perceive an outcome as negative. So it is crucial that employees see the reason for the change and perceive its implementation as consistent and fair. So mostly this procedural fairness should be there. They should not feel that there is any disadvantages to them, and procedurally everything is done very fairly. And especially important when the employees are already perceiving certain things that the change process to be negative, or they are not very much believing the change process. It is very crucial for the employees to see the reason for the change and perceive that this implementation of the change process is very very consistent and fair. Another way that can be used to overcome this resistance to change is by manipulation and cooptation. We'll understand both this concept. Manipulation refers to a covert influence attempts twisting the facts to make them much more attractive, withholding information, and creating false rumors to get employees to accept the change are all the examples of manipulation. So the individuals, they can be manipulated into believing that the change is good and it is required by the organization. The various ways or the covert ways that can be used to influence is to, by twisting the facts, by making them much more attractive for the employees to believe, by withholding certain important crucial information from the employees, or by creating any false rumors to get employees to accept the change. So in this way, the organization, the top management can manipulate the employees in order to make them embrace the change, in order to make them overcome resistance to change. For example, if management threatens to close a manufacturing plant whose employees are resisting and across the board pay cut, and if threat is actually untrue, management is using manipulation. So an example is given whereby management threatens to close a manufacturing unit whose employees are resisting, or to make a whole across the board pay cut. All the organization, they have to undergo a pay cut, thereby creating a threat which is actually not very genuine or very not very true. The management is using manipulation in order to overcome this resistance to change, because since the employees are afraid that they will be losing the jobs or there will be reduction in their income they're earning, so they will be accepting the change and they will be manipulated by the organization in believing that due to this threat they will be accepting the change and overcoming the resistance to change. So these are the one of the examples of manipulation which can be used by the top management or the change agents in order to overcome resistance to change. Cooptation is, on the other hand, combines manipulation and participations. So not only manipulation, the employees are also made to participate in the change process. So this process of cooptation happens. What happens in that cooptation? It seeks to buy off the leaders of resistance group by giving them a key role, seeking their advice, not find a better solution, but to get their endorsement. So what happens? We generally, under this quotation, what happens? The change agent, they try to buy off or to attract these leaders of the resistance group by giving them a very key role in the change process, or by seeking their advice, not to make a better solution, not to come at a better solution, but to get their endorsement. Whenever it is seen that the leaders of the resistance group, they accept a very particular key role, or when they are advising this change process, and those people who are under them, this resisting group, they, once they see that the leaders are already accepting the change or being a part of the change initiative, then they will try to overcome this resistance to change and they will try to accept the change. So this quotation can also be used by the top management or the change agent in order to see that the resistance to change is overcome. Both manipulation and cooptation are relatively inexpensive ways to gain the support of adversaries or the people who are resisting the change, but they may also backfire if targets become aware that they are tricked or used. Once that's discovered, the change agent's credibility may drop to zero. So, while implementing this manipulation and cooptation as one of the ways of overcoming resistance to change, it has to be seen that the targets should not be aware that they are being manipulated and cooptation is used against them, because once they know that they are being tricked, once this is discovered, the change agent's credibility may drop to zero. So the change agent's credibility will reduce and these people will not believe whatever the change agent says later. So it is very important to see that the people who are manipulated or against whom the cooptation is used, they are not aware about this manipulation and cooptation. Another way in which we can use to overcome the resistance to change is by selecting people who accept change. So what happens under this research suggests that the ability to accept and adapt to change is related to personality. Some people simply have more positive attitude about change than others. So we have to see that we have to accept, select people into the organization who generally accept the change or who are ready to change at any person. There should be in the personality of these employees that they should be in a way easy to for them to accept any change. Some people, they simply have positive attitude towards everything and they are the right people, those who can accept change. And there are certain people who are having a very negative connotation or idea about the way things operate in the organization, or their personality is such that they are very negative thinking and they do not want to accept anything positive or anything that will be resulting to growth. So if we have these people who are having this positive attitude, then they will be embracing the change much more in a positive way and more efficient way than those people, those who do not have a positive attitude. Such individuals are open to experience, take positive attitude towards change, are willing to take risks, and are flexible in their behavior. So these positive people, those who are accepted in the company, these are some people who are open to these experiences. So whenever there is a change is happening, they're open to experience. They want to change themselves. They want to have a positive attitude towards life, the positive attitude towards the change, and they are ready to take risks, and they're very flexible in their behavior. They're ready to change their behavior, gain a new behaviors and skills in order to operate in the new working environment. They're ready to accept the change as a challenge. They're able to take risks. So these people are people who are very positive attitude, having very positive attitudes. By selecting individuals who are willing to accept changes, it is also possible to select teams that are much more adaptable. So once we are having people in the organization who are already having a very positive attitude towards the change and who are willing to adapt to the change, then we can also create very beautiful teams that were very adaptable to change, those who accept the change and do not resist it. Studies have shown that teams that are strongly motivated by learning and about mastering the task are better able to adapt to the changing environments. So it is generally seen that those people those groups of people, or those people who are having a positive attitude, who have a learning attitude, who want to learn new things, new skills, new behaviors, and mastering new tasks and accept the challenge of change initiative, they are better able to adapt to the changing environment. So we have to accept or select this kind of people in the organization, those who have this positive attitude, so that they will be easily adaptable to changes in the adaptable to changes in future. So the last way in which we can overcome the resistance to change by using of quotient. What happens last on the list of tactics is quotient, the application of direct threat or force on the resistors. Here we are not trying any indirect way on the resistors, but we directly apply direct threats or force on the resistors and tell them they have to overcome this resistance to change. If management really is determined to close a manufacturing plant whose employees don't accept a pay cut, except to a pay cut, the company is using caution. So if we are trying to if a management tries to say that they're going to change a manufacturing plant, but they do not really want to close the manufacturing plant, then it is manipulation. But when the organization or the management, they try are very determined to close a manufacturing plant whose employees do not accept a pay cut, then the company is directly using coercion or threat against these people, and these people are threatened that their jobs will be lost. So due to this fear, they will be accepting this change and they will be not be resisting the change. Other examples of threats of transfer or loss of promotion, negative performance evaluations, and a poor letter of recommendations. So these are also various tactics of coercion that is used by the management. They threat that they will be transferred from one job to another or location. There will be a loss of promotion. They will not be promoted. Also, a negative performance evaluation will be done, and a poor letter of recommendation will be given, so that whenever the people or the employees leave the organizations and go to outside to work in other organizations, we will having a very poor recommendation that will completely uh, undervalue their experience. So all these tactics are used as direct threats or force on the resistors, and to force them to accept change in the organization. So we have understood the various ways that can be used by successful managers to overcome the resistance to change, the various 9 tactics we have discussed in today's video. Please go through the video. If you have any doubts, contact me. No need to panic. And finally, thank you for your suggestion. And also, I will be sending these notes digitally. So, finally, thank you for your attention.